Secrets have a way of surfacing, but nobody dreamed they'd crash down in the courtroom like this. Kody Brown, the head of the Sister Wives dynasty, was in a judge's chambers, flashes popping, family members gasping, and let loose a tornado that left everybody reeling. Years of quiet talk about Robyn's secret control, behind-the-scenes bargains, and betrayal had previously gone on under the radar. But now the fact was spoken out loud for all the world to hear. Kody didn't simply point fingers. He produced receipts, proof, and a betrayal so profound it destroyed not just his marriage, but the family legacy altogether. This isn't just another chapter in family drama. This is the moment the Brown Empire crumbled, all because of secrets Robyn thought would never see the light of day. The cracks in the Brown family foundation didn't appear overnight. Long before this courtroom bombshell, fans noticed something was changing. Christine, Janelle, and Meri slowly drifted away as Kody seemed to grow more and more devoted to Robyn. She wasn't just another wife. She became the center of every decision, the gatekeeper of Kody's time, and as it turns out, the silent manager of the family's resources. Behind the scenes, resentment mounted. Christine publicly confessed to feeling like an outsider. Janelle struggled financially, usually standing alone to support her children. Meri felt left out, her relationship with Kody diminishing year by year. And in the middle of it all stood Robyn, serene on the surface, but based on Kody's testimony, calculating on the inside. There was always tension simmering. But what everyone did not anticipate was that the man who had stood up for Robyn with his entire heart would be the very same man to reveal Robyn's deepest secrets before a judge. The hearing day was charged with tension. Photographers and reporters stood in front of the courthouse. Fans buzzed within internet forums, speculating if this would finally be the day the tide would turn. Within, the air hung thick. Robyn sat with her head held high, attempting to radiate calm. The other wives were huddled apart, their faces etched in tension, their eyes nervously glancing toward Kody. And then, it started. Kody stepped up to the stand. His voice, normally strong and proud, shook as he began. He talked of unity, trust, and love. But then his tone turned. His words cut sharp. His voice laced with anger and betrayal. He told how Robyn had secretly opened financial accounts in her name alone, channeled funds into business and real estate without anyone knowing, and engineered him to make choices that always benefited her household. Gasps rang out in the courtroom. The judge shifted forward. Robyn's face went white, and then Kody let fly the biggest bombshell of all. Proof, bank statements, emails, texts, evidence that Robyn had been leading a parallel life, one that worked for her kids and her safety, while everyone else in the family struggled. The courtroom wasn't just in shock. The family was also ruined. Christine, fighting back tears, barely whispered that she knew all along that something was not right. Janelle sat immobilized, hands together, at last hearing the truth she had suspected, but could never establish. Even Meri, who usually kept quiet, shook her head with obvious anger. But the most revealing response was Robyn's. For years she had been serene, poised, the wife who knew just what to say. But now, cracks in her facade appeared. She flailed in her own defense, saying she was just protecting her kids. She said her actions were driven by fear, not by betrayal. But the courtroom wasn't buying it. Each new revelation deconstructed her justifications, reducing her reputation to ashes. For the first time, Robyn wasn't the most favored wife. She was the accused, the one whose secrets made her look like the mastermind behind the family's demise. Outside of court, the news spread quickly. Headlines blared betrayal. Social media blew up with fans who felt vindicated after all these years suspecting favoritism. Footage of Kody's testimony went viral, fueling arguments about love, loyalty, and manipulation. The Sister Wives dynasty, which was once a tale of harmony in a polygamous marriage, had now turned out to be a broken dynasty based on lies. And the fans who had been watching for 10 years or more knew everything they believed about the Browns was just half the truth. Off camera, the reality was much grimmer. During the days following the courtroom drama, the Brown family stood at a crossroads. Christine openly declared she was glad the truth was out, although it pained her to hear. Janelle confessed her faith in Robyn was irreparably shattered. Meri, ever reserved, described betrayal and manipulation. But what of Kody? He too was stunned. The man who had once come to Robyn's defense was now the one to demolish her illusion. His marriage to Robyn was on the brink. Could they recover from this degree of scrutiny? Or was this a last nail in the coffin of a marriage that had already taken up so much of his time and allegiance? The family that had once billed itself as immovable was now broken beyond identification. And as the fans wondered what was next, one thing was certain: the Browns would never again be as they once were. As the dust settles, there are questions lingering in the air like dark clouds. Did Kody out Robyn because he was genuinely shocked? Or was it his means of getting control back because he'd lost control of the family? Was Robyn really being selfish? Or was she just holding on in a stacked household? And what's to come? With reputations tattered, trust lost, and betrayal evidence out in the open, the Browns are not only dealing with personal consequences, but also public judgment that might never cease. The love and unity upon which the empire was founded turned into a warning story of power, prejudice, and betrayal. Ultimately, the courtroom battle wasn't about court battles, it was about truth. It was about a man who finally conceded he had been manipulated, a wife who could no longer conceal her darkest secrets, and a family that had to face betrayal in the worst possible manner. To Brown's fans, it was verification of suspicion mounting over the course of years. To the Browns, it was heartbreak. And to Robyn, it was the moment her carefully crafted image crumbled beneath the pressure of reality. This is more than a tale of a troubled marriage, it's the collapse of an empire. And whatever happens next, this much is sure: the Browns will never be the same. Secrets are powerful. And when secrets are finally brought to light, they don't whisper, they explode, blasting everything in their way. That's precisely what occurred when Kody Brown, erstwhile proud father of the sister wives empire, entered a courtroom and started talking. The air was thick that day, vibrating with tension no one could quite define. The courthouse doors groaned open, and in stepped Kody, not swaggering in as fans once remembered, but under the weight of years bearing down on his shoulders. His jaw was clenched, his eyes tense, his face set in a tempestuous look. He wasn't here to defend his family, not now. He was here to shatter it. Newspaper reporters poured onto the courthouse steps, microphones at the ready, cameras flashing, hoping for even a hint of what was to come. Rumor had it for weeks that something big was brewing. Whispers from insiders spoke of secret bank accounts, covert conversations, and betrayals that would shake the Brown family dynasty to its core. But no one, not the fans, not the other wives, not even Robyn herself, could anticipate the magnitude of what Kody was set to disclose. Inside the courtroom, it was crowded rapidly. Christine occupied the second row, her arms wrapped tightly across her chest, a combination of fear and vindication etched across her face. Janelle fidgeted uncomfortably next to her, holding a folder of her own papers. Meri was in the back, face unreadable, though her eyes remained fixed on the front. And then, in a nearly deliberate tardiness, Robyn appeared, wearing subdued colors, her head aloft. She walked with a demeanor of silent defiance, as if challenging anyone to accuse her of something. But as soon as she sat down, she couldn't avoid being stared at. Christine glared at her with a burning look. Janelle wouldn't even look at her. Even Meri, one who had never shied from open confrontation, shook her head in quiet protest. It was like the whole room already knew something incriminating was about to be revealed. And then gavel fell. There was silence. Kody was summoned to the stand. Initially his tone was low, measured, nearly calm. He started with reminiscing about the beginnings of his family, how they had constructed a life together, how he had believed in love, in oneness, in the vision of plural marriage. His words were constructing an image of innocence, of hope. But as he progressed, the tone changed. His words became sharper, heavier, each syllable dripping with the poison of betrayal. "I stood up for her," he declared, his tone indignant. "I stood up for her when the world went against us. I trusted her to be loyal. I trusted her with everything. Our family, our money, our future. And what did I receive in return?" He stopped, surveying the room. Everyone was watching him. The room was silent. And then he hurled the words that would shock the entire Sister Wives universe. Betrayal, lies, manipulation. That's what I got. The courtroom was filled with gasps. A room was filled with gasps. Christine covered her mouth. Janelle's eyes went wide. Even the judge leaned forward. Curious, Kody went on, his voice now filled with fire. He described late-night fights, decisions made in secret, that he found out later weren't his, but Robyn's. He described covert manipulations, hushed tones that turned him against his other wives, splitting where there had been harmony. And then he delivered the first bombshell: financial infidelity. He said that Robyn had opened accounts in her name alone, redirecting funds from the collective family money. He accused her of taking properties, saving up funds, and mapping out a future without the rest of the family in mind. The room erupted in shocked whispers. Reporters scribbled furiously. The judge called for order. Robyn's face flushed pale, her lips pressed into a thin line, as she tried to maintain her composure, but the tremor in her hands betrayed her. Kody wasn't done. He pushed forward, his voice breaking now, no longer with vulnerability, but with the agony of a man who had at last confronted the reality with himself. I was blind, he admitted. I believed her commitment was love. I believed her dedication was to me, to us. But her dedication was solely to herself. She manipulated me. She manipulated us all. Christine was unable to keep quiet. She grumbled under her breath. I knew it. I always knew it. Janelle shook her head in astonishment, speaking quietly to the person next to her. Even Meri, normally so composed, closed her eyes and let out a sharp breath. And yet Kody persisted. He explained how Robyn's presence had alienated him from his other wives, how her words had distorted his point of view so that he felt the others were the issue. He confessed to ignoring the signs, instead opting to accept Robyn's account of what was happening. I let her put walls between us, he said, his voice cracking, and those walls broke up my family. The courtroom fell silent once more, except for Kody's voice resonating against the walls. Each disclosure was akin to a knife, not only for Robyn, but for the whole Brown family legacy as well. And then he brought proof. From a faded leather folder, he retrieved documents, emails, text messages, evidence. Evidence that Robyn had actually made payments, bought properties, and made choices that directly went against the family's accord. The judge studied the papers thoroughly, slowly nodding as the gravity of the evidence became apparent. Robyn's mask was now slipping. Away went the composed woman, who had entered in minutes previously. She stood white-faced, shaking, her eyes alternatively scanning Kody, then the judge, then the papers being circulated. Her carefully constructed life was beginning to fall apart, piece by piece, word by word. And for the very first time, the courtroom, and the world outside it, saw Robyn not as the poised, composed wife she was on TV, but as someone uncovered, vulnerable, and inescapably involved in the ruin of the family she said she loved. As Kody finally withdrew from the stand, the silence was palpable. Everyone was aware that the tale had barely started, but the damage was already irreversible. The Sister Wives' empire, once touted as an uncommon tale of oneness and devotion, now lay shattered at the doorstep of betrayal, and it all conflict, secret, deception, was soon going to come crumbling down. Every explosion has a spark, and for the Brown family, the sparks had been smoldering quietly for years, camouflaged behind smiles on camera and scripted family dinners. While viewers witnessed laughter, faith, and harmony, behind the scenes, a storm was building, a storm ignited by favoritism, secrecy, and simmering resentment. At the forefront of it all was Robyn Brown. When she came into the family, her arrival was like a new chapter. She was younger, lively, and communicated in a softness that endeared her to Kody's heart almost immediately. To the outside world, it was like a fairy tale joining of the already complicated family structure. But for the other wives, the fairy tale soon turned into a nightmare. Christine, ever the voice of opinion, was the first to comment. She had spent years believing in the doctrine of plural marriage, that each wife is equal, that unity is the glue binding them together. But then Robyn came along, and the dynamics changed. Suddenly Kody's time wasn't shared equally. His laughter resonated deeper in Robyn's home. His love stayed longer with her kids, and his choices seemed to cater to Robyn's desires more than anyone else's. It was like I was seeing my family slip away from me, Christine admitted later. Each time I brought up an objection, I was told I was seeing things. But I knew. I felt it. Janelle, more reserved and pragmatic in personality, kept her doubts longer. She concentrated on raising kids, working and maintaining the home stable. But even she couldn't overlook the little things. The outings Kody made with Robyn, the budget meetings where her opinion appeared to hold more authority, the way his eyes melted when Robyn walked into a room. It was like the rest of us were invisible. Janelle later confessed. And then Meri. Her marriage to Kody had already been troubled, with emotional distance and hurtful missteps. But with Robyn around, that distance became a canyon. Where there had once been flashes of reconciliation, now there was only silence. Robyn didn't simply join the ranks as another wife. She became the wife. The family started to break in both seen and unseen ways. Holidays were awkward, meals strained, fights broke out over money, property, parenting, but every fight seemed to resolve with Kody taking Robyn's side. To the other wives, it was a slow-motion betrayal, 1,000 small cuts that left them bleeding. But maybe the most hurtful aspect wasn't even Kody's favoritism. It was Robyn's quiet sway. In Kody's subsequent testimony, Robyn had a way of presenting things that made her appear selfless, but subtly moving the scale in her direction. She would propose a financial step for the benefit of the family, but it always seemed to serve her household best. She would complain about the behavior of another wife, speaking with concern, but sowing seeds of doubt in Kody's mind. It wasn't outright manipulation. Not at first. It was slow, careful, calculated. Like water wearing away at stone, Robyn reshaped the family dynamic until she wasn't just part of the family. She was at the center of it. Christine struggled back. She confronted Kody, pleaded with him to see what was occurring. But whenever she tried to speak, he wrote off her words as jealousy. Janelle also started to feel the cracks, but her efforts to discuss them were pushed away. And Meri, by this point distant, was too worn out to struggle. This left Robyn with more authority than people ever imagined. Money, property, and even family appearances were decided by going through her. She had Kody's ear. And once she got his ear, she had his loyalty. The other wives felt the walls closing in. Christine, frustrated and shattered, started to pull away emotionally. Janelle, always practical, set her mind on survival, saving quietly what she could for her children's future. Meri slipped into withdrawal, her voice diminishing to silence. And all the while Robyn became more powerful, her influence constricting the family like a vice. To the world that watched on TV, the Browns continued to smile, continued to sit for family photos, continued to eat meals in front of the camera. But the fans noticed the cracks too. Comment sections with theories. Fans noted how Kody spent more time at Robyn's home, how he waved off the concerns of the other wives, how his formerly flamboyant plural marriage now resembled a monogamous relationship masquerading. Still, no one beyond the family understood the full extent of it, not until the courtroom. Even Kody himself, years sightless, confessed later that he had disregarded the warning signs. "I thought she was leading us. I thought she was keeping us safe," he explained. "But now in retrospect I realize she was keeping herself safe." Those underlying tensions, those tiny, nearly imperceptible cracks, were what made those courtroom revelations so explosive. Because when Kody finally let it all out, when he confirmed that Robyn had been siphoning money, dictating decisions, and constructing security for herself while the others fought to survive, it wasn't merely a betrayal uncovered. It was years of suffering, suspicion, and anger finally validated. Christine's tears that day weren't just about the documents. They were about every ignored warning, every time she had been silenced. Janelle's shock wasn't just about the bank accounts. It was about the years she had carried financial burdens while Robyn secured her own safety. Meri's anger wasn't just about manipulation. It was about the realization that she had been cast aside not by fate but by design. The underlying tensions had always existed, just under the surface. But once the truth burst into the open, Those tensions were inescapable evidence that the family had been living in a well-crafted delusion. And the worst part, Kody acknowledged that he had been involved in creating that deception. He had stood up for Robyn, shut out the others, and told himself it was all for the sake of unity. But secretly he had been a pawn in Robyn's subtle game, a game that culminated with the family being destroyed. The courtroom confrontation might have surprised the world, but for the wives it was not shock. It was confirmation, an agonizing, heart-wrenching confirmation of all they had sensed for years. The subterranean tensions had long been seething, and the blast that followed was more devastating than anyone had ever dreamed. The courtroom was full, the air heavy with expectation. This was not another hearing. This was the hearing that would determine the destiny of the Brown family legacy. Reporters occupied every seat available, cameras waiting just outside the doors, and fans nationwide held their breath waiting for news, hoping against hope that the rumors of betrayal would be confirmed. Front row, right-hand side of the room, sat Kody Brown, his shoulders hunched, his face white but resolute. This was no longer the charming man viewers had seen on TV. This was a man about to unleash decades of secrets. A man about to tangle with the woman who had captured his heart. Robyn sat across the aisle, calm on the outside, chin held high. She dressed in muted tones, attempting to fade into the stiffness of the room, but her very being commanded every gaze. She drummed her fingers anxiously on the table, looking in Kody's direction, then hastily away. She had been protected by Kody's devotion for years, but today stood out unprotected, with nothing between her and what was about to hit her. The gavel came down, the courtroom was still, and the judge summoned Kody to the stand. He moved deliberately, slowly, each step reverberating against the highly polished courtroom floor. As he sat, he breathed harshly, as if ejecting the burden of decades. His eyes swept the room, landing momentarily on Christine, who sat rigid with feeling, on Janelle, whose white knuckles gripped the armrest of her chair, and on Meri, whose face was impassive, but whose eyes shone. Finally they came to rest on Robyn. For an instant the two stared at one another. Hers were pleading, nearly desperate. His were hard, unyielding. The interrogation started innocently. Questions about the composition of the family, how finances had been kept, what expectations of trust had been there. But then the tenor changed. The lawyer leaned forward and inquired, "Mr. Brown, what was it that made you conclude that your wife Robyn Brown betrayed the trust of your family?" The room was still. This was it. This was what everyone had been waiting for. Kody cleared his throat. His voice trembled at the beginning, but resolved into a stronger one with every sentence. "For years, I thought Robyn was my wife. I thought she was committed to our family. I thought she made sacrifices for the greater good, but I was mistaken. What she did was not sacrifice. It was tactics. And I have evidence." Gasps spread across the courtroom. The lawyer signaled for him to go on. Kody hunched over, his words heavy with fury. "Robyn convinced me, the others didn't respect me, that they were undermining me. She told me I was blind to their disobedience, their resentment. I believed her. And because of that, I turned away from my wives, from my children. I pushed them aside. But what I wasn't seeing, what I was not going to see, was that as I was walking away from them, she was walking away from me." The attorney gave Kody a folder. Grudgingly, slowly, he began pulling out papers, bank records, property titles, money transfers. He held them aloft for the judge. "This," Kody continued, his voice growing louder, "is evidence that Robyn opened accounts in her own name. Money that was intended to benefit all of us. Our children, our families, our future was diverted. She bought houses, she acquired assets, and she did it all without my knowledge at all, or that of any of us. She built her own kingdom, while we struggled to make ends meet." There was a universal gasp of shock. Christine covered her face with her hands. Janelle muttered something under her breath, her lips quivering. Even Meri, who usually covered up her feelings, shook her head in dismay. Robyn, though, sat immobile, her countenance white. She attempted to conceal her panic, but the shaking of her hands gave it away. Her lawyers shifted uneasily, whispering hastily in her ear, but she only nodded, her lips pursed into a thin, tight line. The judge examined the papers carefully, flipping through them one by one. His brow furrowed. Finally, he looked back at Kody. Are you saying your wife deliberately concealed financial assets from the family? Kody didn't hesitate. Yes, she betrayed us. She betrayed me. And she betrayed every single person sitting in this room who trusted her. The room erupted again. The gavel struck for silence. But Kody wasn't finished. His tone became stronger, more biting as he spoke. This isn't about money. This is about manipulation. Robyn didn't steal resources. She stole my loyalty. She whispered in my ear, day after day, year after year, telling me that the others were against me. And I listened. She used my trust to drive me apart from the people who loved me most. And I let her. That's the horrible part. I let her. Christine sobbed softly, holding a tissue. Janelle's eyes filled with tears. Even Meri, strong and unemotional, glanced away, unable to look Robyn in the eye. Kody's voice shook. But he continued. I believed she was my friend. I believed she was my partner. But she was playing a game the entire time. And at the end, she did not just win me. She destroyed us. The lawyer walked to the bench, presenting a pile of text messages. The judge read them hastily. Words of entreaty. Words of estrangement. Words that characterized the other wives as barriers and not allies. The proof was incriminating. Robyn broke her silence, her voice shaking. I did what I had to do. I was defending my children. I was defending my family. But her words rang hollow. The courtroom had heard it all before. The papers, the messages, the accounting records, these said otherwise. The lawyer pushed her. Mrs. Brown, were you defending your family? Or merely yourself? Robyn hesitated. She opened her mouth, then shut it again. Her poise was lost. For years she had been untouchable, protected by Kody's unshakable devotion. But now, with him across the room, laying bare her every secret, she seemed small and cornered, and irretrievably vulnerable. The judge ordered an adjournment. The gavel thumped again. The room hummed with vitality. As individuals murmured frantically, journalists jotted, and fans on the internet went ablaze with comments. Christine leaned close to Janelle. We weren't mad, she breathed. We knew. We always knew. Janelle nodded, lips white but determined. Now everyone knows. When court resumed, tension was intolerable. All knew that damage was irreversible. Robyn's reputation as the dedicated wife, once painstakingly created, was irreparably destroyed. Facts were so loud that no defense she could have raised was able to drown them out. And as Kody sat back down, his eyes brimming with anger and regret, one thing was certain. The courtroom bombshells had flipped everything on its head. The Browns were no longer a family struggling to remain together. They were a dynasty laid bare, their secrets on full display for the world to witness. The sister wives' empire wasn't just cracked, it was crumbling. And there was no turning back. The courtroom had been shaken by Kody's revelations, secrets about money, manipulation, betrayal. But the true aftershock was not in the evidence itself. It was in the faces of the people who had lived it, the women who had surrendered years, even decades, of their lives to a family that now felt like nothing more than a shattered illusion. Christine sat rigidly in her seat, her hands shaking as she gripped a tissue. For years she had struggled to be heard, to sound the alarm to Kody that something was amiss. Each time she tried to talk, she was silenced, told she was jealous, insecure, delusional. But now, here in the courtroom, before the judge, the lawyers, the media, and the world, her worst nightmare had come true. She swiped away her tears, but couldn't conceal the combination of agony and vindication etched on her face. He finally sees it, she muttered beneath her breath. He finally knows what I knew all along. Seated beside her, Janelle sat stock still, her white knuckles clenched as she clung to the armrests on her chair. Janelle was always the practical one, the dependable one. She didn't come out with dramatic showdowns. She survived. She raised her children, toiled hard, sacrificed her own desires for the sake of the family, and all the while she believed that the sacrifices would be shared. But listening to Kody's testimony, witnessing the papers that revealed Robyn secretly building her future, while Janelle struggled paycheck by paycheck. It was too much. Her lips quivered as she leaned over Christine. Do you have any idea how many nights I stayed up worrying about how I was going to be able to afford everything? And she was stockpiling money all this time. Christine nodded, her eyes tearful. We weren't insane, Janelle, we weren't insane. And then there was Meri. She sat farther back, arms crossed tightly over her chest, her eyes fixed on Robyn. Unlike Christine and Janelle, Meri's pain was layered with something different, years of isolation, humiliation and silence. Her marriage to Kody had been on life support long before Robyn came along, but with Robyn's arrival, it wasn't just distance anymore, it was erasure. She had been cast aside, made irrelevant, left to cling to scraps of affection, while Robyn enjoyed the full weight of Kody's loyalty. For years Meri had swallowed her pride, kept quiet, and suffered, but now as the evidence mounted, her silence was broken. Not with tears, but with rage. She shook her head slowly, her voice cutting through for those around her to hear. All these years, she grumbled, and she played us all. Robyn across the aisle sensed their gaze cutting through her. The confident facade that she had been familiar with for so long was disintegrating rapidly. She shook in her hands, her breathing was shallow, and her previous steady gaze now swung nervously between the walls. Lastly, not able to contain herself, she spoke. You don't get it, she said, shaking but loudly enough for the courtroom to hear. I wasn't cheating on anyone, I was guarding my children, I was guarding my family. The words hung in the air, but no one appeared to be moved. The judge cocked an eyebrow, the lawyers shifted restlessly, and the other wives just looked at her with faces that were a mixture of disbelief and anger. Christine snapped first. She leaned forward, her anger trembling in her voice. Protecting your children? What about mine, Robyn? What about all of us? We gave up everything for this family, and you were stashing cash. You made us struggle while you covered yourself. Robyn's face turned red, her lips shaking. I had to. You don't know what it's like. We know. Janelle cut in, her voice cracking. We know exactly what it is like, because we experienced it. We experienced the late nights, the bills, the constant sacrifices, and you sat there pretending that you were one of us, while ensuring that you would never have to experience the struggle we did. Meri didn't cry, she didn't scream, but her voice was cold, level, slicing through the air like a knife. You didn't just save yourself, Robyn, you killed us, and you knew exactly what you were doing. Robyn shook her head wildly, her tears running now. She gazed at Kody, pleading, Kody, tell them I didn't betray you. Tell them I did it for us. But Kody didn't budge. He didn't say a word. His silence was deafening, then had any words been spoken. And within that silence, Robyn's world crumbled. The courtroom was silent, the only sound the soft whimpering of Robyn, as she hid her face in her hands. For years she'd been the wife who was off limits, who always seemed to get the doubt, but now, exposed by evidence and testimony, she appeared small, fragile, and unmistakably guilty. Christine turned away, unable to watch any longer. Janelle wiped her tears, her face hardening with resolve. Meri sat back in her chair, her jaw clenched, her eyes cold. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was the final confirmation that the family they had once built together no longer existed. The media caught every emotion. Headlines were already being crafted. Brown family battered by betrayal. Robyn's secrets revealed in court. Sister wives' empire crashes over scandal. Internet fans detonated in commentary, uploading clips, arguing loyalties, reenacting years of suspicion now vindicated. But within the courtroom, it didn't matter. What mattered was the raw hurt of a family shattered. The judge finally asked for order, but order was gone, trust was gone. The togetherness that once was the foundation of the Brown family was gone. All that was left were the shattered remnants, scattered on a courtroom floor for the whole world to witness. And for Robyn, the woman who'd once strutted with head held high, those fragments wounded the most. She'd based her security on her secrecy, but now, with all eyes upon her, the truth left her naked, and completely alone. The courtroom finally cleared, but the echoes of betrayal hung around like thunder after lightning. Reporters scurried outside, camera flashes, microphones, thrust forward as they bellowed questions. Headlines were already pouring across the internet. Fans analyzed every word of Kody's testimony, every tear Christine cried, every last gasp appeal from Robyn. But for the Browns themselves, the commotion outside was of little significance compared to the carnage left in their own lives. Christine was the first to go, her tears streaming down her face, but her chin held high. For years she had pleaded to be heard, to be seen. She had borne the hurt of dismissal, the shame of being treated as if less than an equal. Now, although the truth had destroyed her, it had also freed her. Walking by the cameras, she uttered just one sentence. I warned him. I warned them all. Her voice was firm, her eyes brimming with sorrow and strength. For Christine, the aftermath wasn't simply about Robyn's betrayal. It was about taking back her power. Janelle came next. She didn't cry. She didn't talk to the press. She simply walked right through the bedlam, her expression impassive. But within, a tempest was brewing. She had spent years working and sacrificing for the family, long hours, tight budgeting, lugging loads that needed to be shared. To find that Robyn was secretly stashing security, while she worked to keep her own home above water, was a blow that bit deep. Later, in a quiet moment, she told a friend, "It's not the money, it's the lies. It's knowing I gave everything, and she gave nothing in return." And then there was Meri. She hung around longer, her eyes icy, her jaw clenched. Unlike Christine and Janelle, her hurt didn't manifest in tears or silence. It became steel. For years she had been invisible, neglected, erased from Kody's love. But now, witnessing the truth laid bare, she wasn't just upset at Robyn. She was upset at Kody as well. Upset that he had let it happen, defended it, played a part in it. As she emerged from the courthouse, a reporter yelled, "Meri, do you believe the family can heal from this?" Meri hesitated, then turned and stared straight into the cameras. Her tone was even, but her words struck like flames. "There is no family left to heal. Not anymore." Within the courthouse building, Robyn sat by herself, her head in her hands. The woman who had once appeared unreachably serene, the wife who had once borne Kody's steadfast devotion, now appeared shattered, her makeup smeared with tears, her shoulders slumped, her voice barely above a whisper. "They don't get it," she whispered. "They never will." But deep down, even she knew the truth. She had played a dangerous game, protecting herself at the expense of others, manipulating decisions in her favor, ensuring her survival, even as the others struggled. For years it had worked, but now, the game was over, and the cost was higher than she ever imagined. And Kody, he found himself standing amidst the wreckage, a man who once boasted of maintaining a plural family unit together, now observing it disintegrate around him. For years he had stood up for Robyn, brushed off Christine's worries, disregarded Janelle's sacrifices, and relegated Meri to the background. He convinced himself it was leadership, that he was defending the family. But in truth, he had been blinded by devotion to one wife and sacrifice of all the rest. And now, as he waited outside the courthouse, the fallacy of his decisions hit him hard. Cameras closed in on him, microphones thrust into his face. Reporters queried, "Kody, do you regret fighting for Robyn? Do you regret how you treated the family?" He stopped, his jaw clenched, his eyes far away. At last, he spoke. "I regret that I didn't hear. I regret that I didn't notice what was happening until it was too late." His words sent waves through the internet, analyzed by critics and fans alike. They viewed him as a victim of Robyn's manipulation, as a coward who would not accept responsibility. But no matter what, the family that had once mesmerized the world was now mere pieces of a shattered dream. The backlash didn't stop at the courtroom. It spread like wildfire into their lives. Christine drew on her independence, forging ahead with a resolve to create a life for herself and her children, free of the shadow of betrayal. Janelle concentrated on recovering financially, determined not to be held back by Robyn's behavior. Meri energized herself on her anger, transforming it into a determination to never again be silenced or effaced. And what about Robyn? She grew more and more alone. The woman who had been once in charge of things now stood shunned, distrusted, alone. Even Kody, though he defended her in the beginning, started to distance himself. The burden of her secrets, the destruction they wrought, was one even he could not ignore. At home, Robyn would plead with Kody, tears in her eyes, for him to hear her out, to comprehend why she did what she did. But the silence of Kody spoke louder than words. His trust in her was broken. The polygamous ideal had been reduced to dust. The sister wives' empire, which had once represented an ideal of faith and family, now was a warning of favoritism, secrecy and betrayal. And yet, even as the family split, a question remained. What's next? Would Christine, Janelle and Meri come together, their mutual hurt forming a new type of unity? Would Kody try to rebuild, or would he come to terms with his ideal of plural marriage being lost to him forever? Would Robyn be able to redeem herself, or was she fated to spend the rest of her days as the woman who destroyed the Browns? No one had the answers. Not yet, but one thing was for sure. The world was watching. Every news headline, every tweet, every viral video kept the story going. Fans engaged in debates of loyalty, dissected every detail, hypothesized about the future. The Browns were no longer a family, but a fractured empire, a living soap opera, a real-time unfolding drama. And during the calm moments, when the cameras stopped rolling and the madness receded, each of them was forced to confront the same terrible reality. The family they had constructed, the sacrifices they had made, the love they had once known, it was all lost. All that was left now was the fallout, and the question that tormented them all. After betrayal so profound, is there ever really a way back?